connections that are going to keep us from God. Any points of that on this about how you have to have self-denial in order to follow Christ? Okay, so we're going to move on. The next point I wanted to make is, it says, though he had a literal choice of whether he would die or not, there was also the underlying issue of whether he was going to deny self or not. After the first and second time, Christ utters, not as I will, but as you will, and your will be done. And respectively, he completely denies self and gives God his knowing, being, and having. He trusts the future to God. Okay, so this is something that I always, thought about. When people talk about, how Christian life is like, okay, being a Christian is not easy. It is not easy because it was not easy for Christ, okay? So even Christ, when he was going to face the hardest part of his life, did not want it. So it is okay when Christians, as a disciple of God, when you feel sad, when you cry, when you want to run away from your cross, run away from your problem, it is fine. That is the human part in you. We were not made to suffer. So it is natural when your body does not seek after the cross. Right? Christ himself, when he came to Gethsemane, right? He was in the garden. He prayed, Father, take this away from me. Father, I don't want this. Father, I don't want to die. Right? His flesh did not want to die. And that is fine. That is natural. But he also realized that he cannot do his will. If he was to save mankind, he could not rely on what he feels. So the same with us, right? You might not want to go to church. You might not want to say sorry. You might not want this illness. You might not want this burden. You might not want, to have this relationship with this person, whatever it is. But if God has called it on your life, if God has deemed that this is what you're going through, that is what you're going through. And you can pray for God to diminish it. You can pray for God to lessen it. You can pray for God to take it away. But know that he's going to do what he's going to do. And whatever the outcome should be, it is always going to be in your best interest, right? However hard your trial is, in the end, you're going to be happy. What happened? Christ, in the end, yes, he was brutalized, he was beaten, he was ridiculed, he was mocked, he was crucified. But what happened in the end? In the end, he saved mankind. So it's the same thing with you. Yes, you're going to be mocked. Yes, you're going to be teased. Yes, you're not going to enjoy certain things that you would have probably liked to enjoy. But in the end, you're going to save another person. You're going to help your friend. You're going to support your family. You're going to give guidance and you're going to testify of how God is. So I'm preaching today at a church, and one of the crux of my sermon today will be on the difference between bearing witness and testifying, right? This lesson talks about that difference. Who you are. Are you a person who bears witness? Or are you a person who testifies? And you have to be able to know the difference and to choose. And when you bear witness or testify, what is going to be the end result? And you have to realize that you're called to testify. Our commission as a Christian is to be able to bring people to Christ. And the only way to do that sometimes is through your suffering. The only way to have people see how great God is sometimes is, through trials and tribulations. Because once they see what you're going through and yet you still remain, they're going to be like, wow, right? The Israelites, it is because of the great, feats that they had overcome, the problems that they saw and how they got through it, that the other nations were like, oh my goodness, like, who is this God that these people serve, right? It is because the 4 Hebrew boys were in the furnace and they overcame that and they came out alive, that people were like, wow, right? It's because of your sickness. It's because of your trial. It's because of that problem in your job, that problem with your coworker, that problem with your Parents, that problem with your rent, that problem with your health, it is because of that problem. Those are the biggest testimonies of who you are, of what God is. And so sometimes he uses that. And Christ knew that. He had to go through Gethsemane. He had to go through Golgotha before he can save mankind. And that's what we have to realize, that before you get that prize, before you get the glory, you got to get the pain. And you cannot have one without the other, because we are on this earth. Okay? Any thoughts on that? Okay, so we're going to move on. So the next part of the lesson I wanted to focus on, it says, herein lies a most important lesson for God's people today, a lesson that many are slow to learn. The spirit of covetousness, of seeking for the highest position of the highest wage, is rife in the world. The old time spirit of self-denial and self-sacrifice is too seldom met with. But this is the only spirit that can actuate a true follower of Christ. So in the days that we live, we find a lot of times most people are in pursuit of the biggest, best, the greatest position, the more money, a bigger house, a better car, a better life. And a lot of times that is a problem, because it doesn't go hand in hand with living a Christian life, right? There's a lot of things that you must do in order to get those positions that will not help your Christian walk. And, I speak to you as I speak to me, right? Realizing that I have to put God first. I have to realize God is the center of my life and not the things that I'm going to pursue, right? Again, it brings me back to the sermon that I'm going to preach today. The difference between Christians and non-Christians. The reason why we're so different is because we do not make those things our aim, or our goal, or our focus, right? And people wonder why, how can you pass out on this opportunity? How can you be given this and then reject it because of God? Who is God? Why? Why would you not, want to take this contract and do this great thing and be wealthy and be rich and be popular and be beautiful? Why would you not do this if it's going to make you better? If it's going to make you great? Why? And when you say because God does not want it, because it does not please God, because there's a better and greater goal beyond that I'm seeking, they're like, what? What are you talking about? Thank you. What are you talking about? You have to realize that God is helping you get to heaven. He doesn't want you to be in a position where, you miss out on salvation. So anything that you do has to have that goal in mind, that focus in mind. And people don't realize that. They want to focus more on what is going to get them the bigger car, the biggest house, the greatest opportunities. And they do not focus on how those things might affect them, right, in the future. Where might it lead you? And it might lead you to destruction. So you have to be very careful of how you make these choices. And that is what's going to make the difference between you as a Christian and a non-Christian. Okay, so what do you guys think about that? The choices that we make and how we look so different from non-Christians, and why we have been called to be different, right? How we represent Christ, right? And how these days in these days people are not practicing self-denial and self-sacrifice, but they're looking after their own gain. What they want in life, what they need, right? That's what they're doing, okay? So what do you guys think about that? Okay? Any thoughts? Okay, we'll move on from that. Okay, so we're asking if you have any comment or suggestions, definitely put them in the comment section here. We're also on Facebook, guys, so just wanted to let you know that. But those who are on the Zoom call can also share. So let's answer some questions. So it says, what is the difference between humility and self-denial? What is the difference between humility and self-denial? Anyone wants to chime in and answer that? Ooh, guys, there's so many flies in here. Sorry. Okay, so for me, the difference between humility and self-denial. Okay, so you can be humble, right? So to me, humility is more like, okay, so if I might know how to do something, I might know that I'm right, I might, but I don't exercise that, right? And then self-denial is, I think it's a little similar, right? Self-denial is more like, self-denial is like when there's something to be gained and you decide that, I'm not gonna go that route, if it's going to affect me spiritually, right? Whether, something that would be pleasurable to me or something that I would like, and I forsake it, I decline it, right? That is self-denial. Knowing that my body wants this, my mind wants this, my stomach wants this, my whole being wants this, but I'm not gonna do it, right? That is different from being humble, whereas humble is more like an emotion, I guess. It's more like when someone, says something to you and you can like thrash out, or you don't, right? And that is, I guess it takes self-denial to be humble, right? And I think that's why they're putting them together. Any thoughts of that? Anyone can be a little more clear? Anyone? So I feel like it feels like you need self-denial in order to be humble, because, yourself can be like egotistical, right? And if someone is stepping on your pride or saying something that that offends you, self-denial is more like, okay, I'm not going to stand up to them. I'm going to let it slide, because, or if someone's giving you some kind of glory, but you feel like if I take this glory, it might affect, I might become too full of myself. So I'm just gonna, not take this award, accolade, or something like that. I don't know. What do you guys think? No thoughts? Okay, so the next question is, how does pop discipleship differ from biblical discipleship? So to me, when it says pop discipleship, I'm thinking of like what is more current, like what is popular these days. What is the difference between popular discipleship and biblical discipleship? Any thoughts? What is the difference between popular discipleship and biblical discipleship? Okay, so Dwayne said, humility is vertical in relation to the power of God versus man's limitedness. Self-denial involves temperance or self-control, which is horizontal, us relating to making choices for or against things around us. That is a great definition. Thank you for that. Okay, so humility is vertical. So humility is how we feel with, so in relation to the power of God, right? So so what God asks of us. If God says to be humble, that is something that we need to do, right? So vertical, God in us, right? And self-denial involves temperance or self-control, horizontal. So that, okay, so if someone asks me to drink, even though I want to, I'm not. So it's like connection with your friends, your coworkers, your family. I can take that definition, definitely. Okay, so, and then now the pop discipleship. For me, I feel like popular discipleship is more like people do it for show, right? People do it to increase the numbers in their church, to show, it's what people can see, but it has nothing to do with what's inside, what the heart is saying. And biblical discipleship has to do with the heart, right? It has to do with humility and self-denial, both humility and self-denial. Whereas pop discipleship has a lot to do with self-denial, so that people can see that I'm doing this for my friends, I'm doing this for my coworkers, I'm doing this for my church, right? People are watching more in popular discipleship, whereas in your heart, you don't necessarily have to feel what you're doing, right? So with popular discipleship, you don't have to necessarily believe in what you're doing, what you're saying. But with biblical discipleship, you have to believe it. God is seeing it, right? God looks at the heart. And so when you read the Bible and you're doing exactly what the Bible says, you're not going to go halfway. You're going to go all the way, and you're going to continue doing whether you like it or not. You are going to deny self, but you're also doing it because of God, not because of you, not because you want others to see what you're doing, but you believe truly this is what you should be doing. Okay. Another question was, how is spiritual humility different from cultural humility? Ooh, okay. So to me, that's the same thing as the pop culture. I say pop culture, that's a common word. Popular discipleship. So spiritual humility is deep, strongly rooted, and it's unwavering, and nothing can shift it. No matter what people say or do, you're not going to change your mind about how you feel and why you're doing it, because it's connected to God, as was said. But cultural humility is more like etiquette, right? It's more like manners, right? I don't really know why I'm doing this, and I don't really care. I don't really like it, but I'm going to do it because that's what the culture asks for. Like, for example, when a guy stands up at a bus stop, right? He does it not because he really feels like it, but because he thinks, that's, if he doesn't do it, then they're going to look bad. He's going to look like, a bore, and people are going to talk badly about him. So that's why he does it. It's not really based on his religion, his faith, his connection to God at all. It's based on what he learned at home and what everybody in society is saying. So with cultural humility, it can change, right? Because if you're in a different place, in a different setting, and that culture doesn't ask for that, then you won't do that, right? For example, I could use the African culture that I learned, that when a person burps, right, that means the food was good. That means it was tasty. That means thank you, I appreciate you, and I appreciate the food that you gave me. But in America, right, in Haitian cultures, if you burp, it's rude and nasty. So meaning with cultural humility, it can change, it can shift, right? If your culture, for example, Indians, right, they don't look you in the eye. They keep their head down, and, they let the men speak. And it seems like they're humble, right? It seems like they're quiet. Asian culture is the same thing. Females are humbled, and they're quiet, and they're submissive, and they're passive. But is their heart humbled? Right? I'll never forget the story of this guy who told me his grandmother told him to sit down, and he didn't want to sit down. And so, but then she could beat him, so he sat down. But he said, I might look like I'm sitting down, but in my mind, I'm standing up. And that to me is the difference between cultural humility and spiritual humility. Cultural humility says you cannot stand up to your elders, and if they tell you to do something, you have to do it, whether you want to or not. So you do it because you don't want to get a beating. You don't want people to look bad at you. You don't want people to say things about you that are, going to be mean. But inside, you really don't care for those things, and you could do whatever you want and whenever you want. And so inside, you're really standing up, or you really are promiscuous, and you really are, like egotistical and angry and vindictive and jealous, and all these things that can come from not being humble, right? So, would anyone thinks anything different from that? Okay, and the last question is, how does self-denial intersect with discipleship? So how does self-denial intersect with discipleship? So self-denial intersects with discipleship. How does that? Okay, so to me, it is more like if I am, okay, so self-denial, with an example. So I care about the image that I have and what people see, right? And I don't want them to think badly of me because I feel like whatever they see Nicolette do, they're going to think this is what a Christian does, okay? So I'm going to deny self a lot of times, not necessarily because of, what I would necessarily believe in, right? So because I know there are things that are not necessarily wrong in my eyes or my thoughts. But if other people think they're wrong, then I know and feel like I should not do them. Because as a disciple, I should be leading people to Christ and not leading them astray. So even Ellen G. White says, to not do anything that's evil and the things that resemble evil. So I will practice self-denial in order to be a good disciple, right? Or to lead others to Christ, because, I don't want that person to say or think, okay, Nicolette shouldn't do this, yet she's doing it, and that makes her a bad Christian or a bad representation of God, a bad representative of God, right? So to me, they do intersect very much. Not everyone does that, and that's why not everyone is a good Christian, because not everyone practice self-denial. Okay, some people just don't care about what other people think, or that they are representing God in a certain way. They want to do what they're going to do, and they don't care what people say about them. But I feel like as a Christian, you should, because you are bringing people to Christ, not just you. You're not becoming a Christian just for your sake, right? So, an example, I'm not married, but if I got married, I wouldn't wear jewelry like a wedding ring, not because I necessarily might not think that it's right or wrong, but because I feel like in the setting that I am, if people think Christians or Seventh-day Adventists should not wear jewelry, then I shouldn't. Okay, so that is my thought in how self-denial intersects with discipleship. Any thoughts? Anyone? This dress, you guys, is like embarrassing me. Okay, any thoughts? Okay, we're actually going to end early today because I have to preach at another church. So you guys pray for me. If there are no other thoughts or ideas, we can move to just praying to end. I don't think I have any other thing to say. Okay, so just remember that Christ had practiced self-denial as well, right? He wanted us to be followers of him. So he was the first example of, doing the right things. And yes, he was God, but he was fully human. And he was tested and tried in the same ways we are, even though he lived in a different era and the problems might have been different, but the crux of it is similar, right? Self-denial, he did that. Humility, he had that. He went through the pain and the suffering, and he used that in a way to show to us that, listen, you can suffer and you can even die for Christ, for God, right? The same way he did. So definitely take him as an example. Don't think that, oh, I can't do what he did because he was God. Well, he was fully human. As a matter of fact, another aspect of the lesson was that he was tested twice, because not only did he have to overcome his human nature and not, drinking or, having sexual intercourse or different, lying, but he also had to overcome the temptation and desire to use his godliness to overcome some of his problems, right? He said, if I wanted to, I could have just disappeared. I'm giving myself to you. You're not taking me, right? He even mentioned that. He said that because he was telling them, like, I had to overcome my godliness in order to do this. Don't think that you're taking anything that I'm not giving you, because I am a God, and if I so choose, I could have just disappeared. I could have just said no, right? At Golgotha in the garden, right? Calvary's garden is okay. Anyway, in the garden, right? He prayed for the problems to pass him. So he knew that there was going to be pain, and he did not want it. Just like us, we don't want to suffer. We don't want to have issues, right? And that God understands that, because he too did not want to suffer and did not, but he knew he had to, because there was a greater picture at hand, and that is salvation. So just the same with you. I know you don't want to suffer. I know you don't want to endure certain things, but remember, you have to carry a cross wherever it leads, as long as you know that in the end you will be saved. You're doing the will of God. Okay, so that is the lesson that we had for today. We're going to end here with a word of prayer. I'm going to pray so we can close. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for allowing us to have this wonderful morning. I ask that you bless all of those who were listening, all those who participated. Help them to understand fully the lesson so that they can apply it to their lives, and help them to be able to demonstrate to another person so that they too can learn about you and be saved. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. I will see you guys next time. Bye.